Welcome. My name is Natasha Sherman, and I am your host. My guest today is Stephanie Oswald. She lost her 23-year-old son, Andrew, January 27th of 2017, due to an overdose of fentanyl-laced heroin. She's here to talk about her son, about what happened, because she is committed that nobody else has this experience, and she's committed to change. Welcome.
Hi.
So, it's hard for most of us to even imagine what it must be like for you.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's even hard for you to imagine. There must be days where it's like, this can't be real.
Every day, yeah.
Yeah, but tell us what happened kind of sequentially, because I think people need to hear. In all my research about drug addiction, and first of all, we know now it's a national epidemic. It's not any particular part of society. There's not any particular one reason. There's not any one treatment that works. But we have to explore it, and we have to hear other people's stories so we can take a look at what might need to happen. So your son had a job?
Oh, he always worked. My
Okay.
son always worked. He was, everybody loved him. He was an old soul, loved music, researched music. He was really smart. And what I find is through my grief counseling groups, every single child that has OD'd, same characteristics, all the same personality traits. I used to say, I don't know what I'd do if my son died. My husband and I would talk. I still don't know what I'd do.
Yeah. So at 23 he died, but when did you know that he was using drugs? And when we were talking before, you said it started with a car accident and oxycodone, yes?
Yeah.
So tell me about that.
Well, I'm not going to, he did smoke pot. He did
Right.
But he wasn't a cocaine person. He wasn't a speed person. He wasn't a pill person. He was very artistic. He wrote. And I was okay with the pot. I was okay with that because it couldn't kill him,
Right. And everybody makes their own decision
Right,
about that.
exactly.
But this is something different. So
he was in a car accident, and it was near fatal. He was thrown out of the back of his back window. He had flipped and turned and near Sloan Avenue on 95 and just went all over the place. He had some serious injuries. He recovered from them. He was going to need knee surgery. So he was having aches and pains, and he went to his regular family doctor, and he prescribed him 120 15-milligram Oxycontins.
120. Okay.
And 92 milligrams Xanax. Now, he was 22 years old at the time. Long past when Mom went in the office with him,
Of course.
So I didn't know. He had a job. He could take care of his own stuff. Yeah. The pills were quite different from when he started doing the heroin. Because when he started doing the heroin, I was starting to notice.
Right.
All his good friends that referred to me as Mom 2.0. It was important for me to know all of them and their parents, and I love them to pieces. But then less and less, I'm not seeing them. And this other person was coming around. I told him I didn't like him, and I didn't want him in my house anymore. And he was just progressing, the nodding, so on. So my husband and I just said, enough. So I got on the phone and I made arrangements, and I wasn't going to send him to Florida.
So you saw something was wrong.
Oh, I knew something was wrong.
And did you confront him? Because, so he starts with the Oxycontin, and then typically that's what happens. Oxycontin is hard to get, it's expensive, and then they progress to heroin. And so initially he's using the pills to alleviate pain. But as we know, there's an addiction that happens. And then he moves on to heroin. At what point did you see like a major shift?
I have to say that a couple of times, it was the porch. He would go out on the porch, which is a normal thing for him, and listen to music. That was his thing. And I would go out there, he'd usually go out there and have a cigarette. And I'd go out there, and this would be him. Okay. Fishy. And more of that started happening. He'd be sitting in the living room, and he would just start. So I asked him one night to wash the dishes. So he's at the sink, and I was filming it, and he's nodding over the sink. When it was all done, I said, "Hey, Drew, you got to see this. I filmed you just to say that you actually did the dishes. Right. You got to see this." And he saw what was going on. Of
course, him doing the dishes, nodding out.
Yeah. Deny. I'm tired. My knee hurts. So then Christmas Eve dinner at my in-laws, he was nodding out, eating his food. And I'm kicking him. Went home, did research, found his rehab, set it up. He came home one night. I said, "Here's your choice." I had a suitcase packed. I said, "You can go to rehab this moment or go live under a bridge. Either way, your bag is packed." And that's it. He chose rehab. So we drove him.
And at this point, was he denying it, or was there any point that he came out and said...
Oh, he had no choice because I found some in his room.
Right. Okay.
Did
he see it as a problem?
Of course not.
Yeah, that's part of the issue.
Because
when they do see it as a problem, from what I read, when they do see it as a problem, it's very momentary, but then they're so craving their next fix that it's no longer the problem. Like the idea of it being a problem, just get me to the drugs.
Right. It is a terrible, terrible demonic thing. I don't know. But his friends, the people he was in rehab with, these guys are wonderful. They take time to talk to me and explain it to me from their point of view, and explain to me what it does to them, as best they can, and how it grabs you, and it doesn't let go. It just seeps into you, and then you could go a couple of days, but then there's just that feeling that you have to have, but it's never going to be the same as the first time, and it's like that's why they say chasing the dragon. And my son knew this. He's not stupid, and I used to have conversations with him, and he would say that he thought people who did heroin were idiots. He'd have conversations with his friends. He just couldn't understand it. His friends didn't even know why he went away to rehab. Well, they didn't know he went to rehab. When he died, I had to tell his friends that he overdosed on heroin, and they were shocked. They're still shocked. They didn't know.
So they didn't know the extent?
They didn't know he was doing heroin.
Oh, they didn't know that
Not at all.
One of the things that came up over and over again is one of the things that kills this population is the stigma. So that the stigma is part of the killer, because if there wasn't such a stigma, people would feel freer to say to their friends, "Hey, I think I might have a problem," or just come out openly. And so again, they're not only dealing with the addiction, but they're dealing with hiding it.
Right. And I think the secret part comes more from the family than it does the child, because, well, like I said, my son kind of secluded himself slowly from his friends that would know and say something, because his friends would have said something. And that's why the first line of his obituary, we said, on January 27th, 2017, we lost our beautiful son, Andrew S. Oswald III, to a heroin overdose. People were shocked. Like,
Good
what?
for you.
What? And I said, if we don't start putting that out there and saying, this is what happened to my child, instead of saying, passed away quietly at home,
Right.
at that age, unless they had an illness,
Right.
you got to let people know this is what's going on, and our children are dying. To me, it's another form of terrorism. There's stuff you can get online. This fentanyl, the cofentanyl, you could get it online. The government's got to really get involved and start worrying about that a little more.
Yeah. So I have a question. So he went into rehab, and then he came out of rehab, and where did he go?
He went to detox.
Detox.
Then he went to rehab, and then he went to a sober living house.
Okay.
And he was there for 3 months, and then the owner sold it. So he was with his two roommates, Justin and Dan, and they got an apartment together. And oddly enough, they all worked in the same place. And it was a place for children that had a hard time learning, oddly enough. Kids loved him.
So he's living in this apartment with these two other people in
Other
recovery.
heroin addicts, yeah. And they were doing fine. And then one day, someone from the place that he went to rehab calls me that I had a relationship with. She calls me and she said, I just want to let you know that I was told that someone saw Andrew shooting heroin. When I remembered to breathe again, I asked her specific questions. Like, did someone actually see him with a needle putting it in his arm? Because he had never shot heroin before. That was confirmed. I hung up with her, called my husband, and we drove up there. It's 3 hours away. We had a big confrontation. I had already set it up for him to go back to rehab. Of course, he wasn't going to go. I couldn't make him.
Right. He's an
You know,
adult.
I mean, it's just, sometimes some of these rehabs are just kind of like revolving doors,
Sure.
you know. Now, my son is smart enough to kind of see these things, but he refused. And I said to him, you die, I die. Know that. And I would repeat that to him. And, you know, I helped him get all the furniture for the apartment. His two buddies were great.
So he didn't go to rehab that time. What did he say he was going to do instead?
Not going to do it anymore.
Okay, got it.
Right. So, you know, he had this job and he was really happy with it. And, you know, I'd ask Justin, how's he doing? Great, great. I would visit him a lot. I would test him a lot because he wasn't in the sober living house anymore.
And the tests were coming clean?
Yeah, but, you know, they learn it's 3 days in their system. And so I wasn't kidding myself.
Right.
Or my husband wasn't being kidded either. And then he couldn't come home for Christmas because he had to work. So he was coming home January 16th for a week. I was thrilled. And he called me. He said, I had a little fender bender with my car. I said, well, can you duct tape it till you get here and we'll have it fixed? He was like, yeah. Comes home. He looked better than he had looked in a long, long time.
Wow.
Just my mother, my sister, everybody was, you know. And was here all week, at my house all week. His car wasn't done yet, so we drove him back on a Saturday. He had to work. So we said, we'll bring it to you when it's done. That was the next Wednesday. Drove it up to him. Still looked great. Car was all fixed. Life was good. Hug, kiss. Again, reminded him, you die, I die. Last thing he saw me do from the passenger seat of the car was this. I was blowing kisses to him. 2 days later, he died. The police called.
Where was he when he died?
In his room. And the police called and they said to my husband, are you aware of your son's problem? And my husband said, yes. And they said, well, your son is gone. Now, my husband's on the road driving. He said, don't call any other number because that would have not been good for me. So he raced home. And he came in, grabbed my shoulders, and he was crying. And so his mother was in the hospital with cancer. And he said, our son is gone. I stopped breathing. And then the word no came out of my mouth. I don't even know how many times. The crying, the screaming, telling God that, I hate him. I'm, something I wouldn't normally do. But Deacon John said it's okay to be angry with God for a while, or occasionally. There were no words. There were just, I couldn't stop crying. I couldn't think. My
Is
husband,
your only child?
he was a miracle baby. I wasn't supposed to get pregnant.
Wow.
I had surgery when I was 19, and the doctor said, you're not going to be able to have children.
Wow.
And at 34, because my husband is definitely my soulmate. We have a wonderful marriage. And one of the first things we discussed was, we're not going to let this split us up, because that happens often. Mm-hmm. It's going to make us stronger, and we're going to fight together. And I have pretty much cried ever since. I can't stop it. I can't help it. It just does. Sometimes just a word somebody says is Drew. All the music, every bit of music he downloaded on my phone are things he told. We went to concerts, every concert together. We bought shirts, and now I have all his concert shirts, and my sister's going to make a quilt out of the shirts. His best friend, Sean, amazing kid. He got all like the turntable and the guitar and da-da-da. He always comes over. His friends still come over. They text me. The moms call me. They invite me for dinner. And I'm very blessed with that. My best friends are awesome. My sister's my rock. My brother was his godfather, and he's also a funeral director. So he jumped through hoops. My son died on a Friday. Saturday morning, he went up there and got my son so I could say goodbye to him.
Wow. There are no words. What is it? Is there anything along the way that you think could have happened, should have happened? The way society looks at it, what is it that you would have wanted to happen along the way?
I would have liked the whole opioid thing to have been made bigger a long time ago, because this somebody didn't just notice this. I had 5 surgeries the year before on my shoulder. Like here, and I think maybe in the 1 year and the 5 surgeries, I might have taken 90 of them. Serious surgeries. It's been out there forever. Just like with disability, you fight it, but you see these people. What is your why are you disabled? Kind of thing. But it could have been started a long time ago. And then they could have gotten to the crux, what I like to say, the crux of the igloo. What the true problem is. Okay, so they're getting the opiates all under control. And that's great. I think that's great.
So what's the true crux?
Being able to buy the fentanyl and the fentanyl online. China, Canada, Mexico. Get it online. You touch the stuff, you OD. We don't even know if my son had the needle in his arm. He might have died just from preparing it. Okay. The co-fentanyl, they put elephants down with. Most people die before they even get high.
It's bizarre, but You know, for a while there was the methadone way of treating addiction. And it was very interesting because they said that what happened was that methadone could carry you for 24 hours, whereas you really want to fix with heroin every few hours. And that doctors initially could prescribe it to people so they could manage their addiction.
Right.
And that there was some law passed that made it impossible for doctors to give you a prescription to manage it yourself. You had to show up at a clinic every 24 hours.
As they do.
Which was insane because, A, you're standing in line, you might have a job, and you're standing in line with, hundreds of other people who are addicted, who, again, it's not a supportive environment. So I think one of the things as you're talking is, there's this specialist in Vancouver who talks about how they have addicts come in and give them clean syringes and, teach them how to do the drugs. And it may sound bizarre, but we're not saving anybody by criminalizing it and by putting people in jail.
That makes me so angry.
And again, the problem is the problem, and it's not going anywhere quickly, but we're not managing it at all.
I believe in rehab through medication. Because...
And they talk about medications that will do that.
Right. And even if, I know a few people, I've known it for a long time, who've been on methadone or Suboxone, what have you, for a very long time, but they're okay, you know? And if that's what's going to fix it for them,
yes,
that's great.
And also not have them out there stealing,
on
doing
the corner,
anything,
doing whatever they have to do to get money. So, so I totally agree with that. And it's I've actually seen these places where the people stand in line all because I wanted to know. Because now I probably know as much as a junkie about heroin and fentanyl. It's just insane. Because I'm going to make a difference. I mean, I have a really loud voice, and I could get it real loud.
Good.
And I'm not going to stop. Ultimately, I'd like to do a march on Washington and have everyone that lost someone take a river rock and paint it and put person's name that they lost to a heroin overdose. And when we get to our destination, we're just going to make a pile. Now, picture that. If people are a little taken aback by, marching about heroin, they're going to be able to talk about the cleanup. They're just, I want to do that, and I want to do it real bad. So I'm looking at all kinds of ways. Yeah, it's a lot of red tape, as always.
Where do you get support?
My whole family, my best friends, Drew's friends, their families, my sister's my rock. She's amazing. My brother, I just when I think about everything that he did, I don't know how he could have done that, but he did, and he wouldn't have had it any other way. And Andrew was cremated because, we always talk about stuff like that. Some of his ashes are in here. Of course, it's a music note. Andrew used to hike with Sean and his cousin Will. We have pictures of that. And my husband went with Sean, hiked to where they used to go at the water gap, and took some of his ashes. I think we have a little film of it, and tossed them. And it was funny because the wind blew this way first, and then it switched and went this way. And there were some girls down on a rock, and some of them went in their hair. I said, just like my son going to the girls. But he comes to me. He goofs on me all the time. And I always believe that white feathers or shiny pennies mean that he's there. So I have a little bowl that every time I find a penny. And last week, on my hood, there was a ton of white feathers.
Wow.
Now, no bird parts, but the feathers.
Yes.
You know, and I just know he's with me. I know he is.
And what would you say, we've got like 2 minutes, what would you say to other parents going through this?
You've got to know everyone they hang around with. You have got, when Drew would come home with his friends, I would make sure that we had at least a 5-minute conversation so I could get to know, to see what they had been doing or not doing. Know the parents. Not to say that you have to go to dinner with them. Know the drugs. Familiarize yourself with what happens when you do this or that.
I think that's really important.
Very important.
Because it's very easy, it's a wishful thinking to bury our heads in the sand and think it's not going to happen to me, but really to educate ourselves. And then I think the other thing for me is educate your children about not just taking a doctor's prescription. And you know, even if they're adults and they don't have to consult you anymore, like really manage your well-being, because just taking a medication without doing the research can kill you.
It's just the knowledge, the teaching has to start in elementary school.
Yes. I want to take 1 minute to read this. You brought this to me. It's called Take Me in Your Arms. And it's a combination of, I gather, authors, but it's Miss Heroin. So now, little man, you've grown tired of grass, LSD, goofballs, cocaine, and hash. And someone pretending to be a true friend said, I'll introduce you to Miss Heroin. Well, honey, before you start fooling with me, just let me inform you of how it will be. For I will seduce you and make you my slave. I've sent men much stronger than you to their graves. You think you could never become a disgrace and end up addicted to poppy seed waste. So you'll start inhaling me one afternoon. You'll take me into your arms very soon. And once I've entered deep into your veins, the craving will nearly drive you insane. You'll swindle your mother, and just for a buck, you'll turn into something vile and corrupt. You'll mug and you'll steal for my narcotic charm and feel contentment when I'm in your arms. The day when you realize the monster you've grown, you'll solemnly swear to leave me alone. If you think you've got that mystical knack, then, sweetie, just try getting me off your back. There are a couple of other verses, but I will go to the last one. You will return, just as I foretold. I know that you'll give me your body and soul. You'll give up your morals, your conscience, your heart, and you will be mine until death do us part. And that's the power of heroin and addiction. So, Stephanie, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
And, you know, I just wish you some peace in this process. And thank you for taking this on as a mission.
I'm not stopping.
Good. My name is Natasha Sherman. Thank you for joining us.